Welcome to What to Do When You Have Outgrown Excel for Budgeting and Planning. Hi, I'm Heather Cole with Lodestar Solutions, and today with me is Mike Bernache, when we're going to talk about what we're seeing in clients that come to us when they're like, hey, I love Excel, but I think I've hit its capacity. So we're going to keep this short and sweet and tell you what action you need to take today to evaluate, have I outgrown Excel and what should I do next? So the first question is, how do you know when you've outgrown Excel? Well, you will start to answer questions to yourself like, hey, we're challenged to meet the ever-changing needs of executives. You know, you're working late and the executive comes in and goes, so I have this idea. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always trembled when someone tells me that because it means I could have a lot of work, right? And when we use Excel for our budgeting and planning, that usually means that we have to completely overhaul our spreadsheets. Now, for years, I've been in finance and I have a love-hate relationship with Excel in that it's super duper flexible. We can really have it do whatever we want, but it's very challenging to maintain, especially when executives come and says, I'd like to see the data in a different way. Now, you've probably been there too. The next thing that you'll probably think about is that you have this love relationship with Excel, but you also know its limits. You know that your formulas might not be 100% right. You know that there may be areas that are like in the formulas, some numbers are fat fingered, and that every year you have to go update those, but you might miss one, right? And you kind of have that fear when you're submitting the final budget thinking, gosh, I hope it's right. And then finally, your organization is growing and is maybe in acquisition mode. There might be a lot of mergers going on, and you are terrified about the amount of work that every time they announce a new acquisition is coming, you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to have to do to these spreadsheets to make sure we can incorporate those new entities or those new departments or those new geographic areas. So if you've had that fear and think, I'm going to have a lot of work to do, well, hold on, we're going to show you today how you can move in to new technology that will make your life so much easier. So first, let's make sure that we're all on the same baseline. So let's educate ourselves on what is possible. And the first thing to do is to really understand the world of multidimensional tools. Now, for many of you, you know this, but we're going to give you a little refresher to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So let's just use Excel as our baseline, and we're going to use a very simple concept here of an Excel spreadsheet that we use for budgeting. And we typically see it where the months go across the top and our expenses go down the side. And what people will do is they'll then copy this same template into multiple worksheets and have Department 101, Department 102, Department 103. Does that sound familiar to you? Many tabs at the bottom representing those departments, and then one at the end that says consolidated, right? Or the roll-up or Division 1 subtotals. But here's the challenge with it. What happens when the CFO comes to you and says, hey, we're going to add a couple more accounts, get a little bit more granular into our items. Now you have to go add that item to every page or every worksheet of your file, right? Now you have to go in there and then also adjust those calculations. If you've ever done this, it is not fun. And then what happens? They say, well, we're going to have a couple versions. We're going to have actuals, we're going to have budget, we're going to have, last year's actuals, maybe version 6, version 7. I want to compare those. So now you're doing file save as version 2, file save as version 3. And then they go, oh, we want to add another account. Now you got to go all those templates, all those worksheets and add more accounts. It's enough to make you pull your hair out. But in a multidimensional world, what we do is we create almost like a cube structure that allows us to slice and dice the information. So for example, imagine a Rubik's Cube. We all know what that is, right? So that's a 3-dimensional object. And on one side, we have our months. One side, we have our items, our expenses. And then maybe the third dimension is our departments. And we're allowed to slice and dice those and rotate them very easily. But in a multidimensional world, you can have as many dimensions as you want. So we could also add to that a version dimension that will have our actuals or our budget and so forth. And now we can slice and dice this. And this is where it's like planning and budgeting nirvana. If you probably use pivot tables in Excel, it's like pivot tables on super steroids, but you still can use the Excel interface in many technologies today on top of those multidimensional cubes. So the second thing you want to educate yourself on is what if modeling. Now, you've probably tried to do this in Excel, but it's really challenging. And what I mean by that is, what if interest rates go way up? I wanted to be able to do a version of my plan, and I want to change that interest rate and see what happens throughout the model. Or maybe costs. Right now, the consumer price index is about 8.3%. I want to be able to adjust costs in line with inflation because it's going crazy. And then also being able to have forecasting capabilities, saying, being able to kind of use some of the technology to say, based on the trends that we're having, this is what it thinks that we're going to be. And then finally, as you're starting to explore what is possible, you need to think about your personal environments within your organization. And what I mean by that is there's two basic forms of technology today in the planning space. There's on-premise, meaning you kind of within your IT department, that might be in Amazon, IBM, or Azure Cloud, but you own the software, or hosted, where another the software provider does all the maintenance on it. So here's what I want to say about that. When we talk about cloud or on-premise, and why this is important to you right now is because certain software companies only are on cloud and other ones are only on-premise, and then some have both. So what I want you to write this down, make sure you go talk to IT. Find out what the strategy is for your organization before you even start looking at software, because it will help narrow down your field to technologies that work within your structure. So now let's show you what is possible. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike, why don't you show us what people can do today and how it's like nirvana compared to Excel.
Awesome, would love to. All right, so let's jump into the demo. Today we're going to talk about Planning Analytics. It's a product by IBM, industry-leading product that allows you to start and finish your budget from beginning to end. That includes everything in there that you need to take your budgeting process to the next level and more importantly, get out of that Excel. So let's start here. This is just a simple screen that allows us to dive in to different areas of our budget, right? Every one of you has a different area of your budget that you need to work on, from product sales to headcount, eventually getting over to your income statements and things of that nature. So let's just start simple and start with products. You'll see here we have very much looks like an Excel spreadsheet, right? As Heather talked about, multi-dimensional. So we have all of our dimensions on the top. So as Heather talked about, right, we have months and we have, in this case, products. But let's say you needed to, you have a number of different companies or cost centers or locations or whatever it might be. Here, it's as easy as switching from Massachusetts to Maryland, and I'm into that next quote unquote Excel tab, right? The beauty of this is, though, it all works together. It all runs together. So when I input something here, it goes over and it flows actually to the very end to the income statement. So very, very easy, very, very time efficient, and really simple. Once you have this in front of you, simple to enter, and it's going to get even simpler as I show you all of our shortcuts and all of our items to make this thing really hum.
Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you show them how they can slice and dice that too?
Absolutely. That's what I was headed next. So in Excel, right, you have a static sheet that you really can't move your months to your rows, and not an easy thing to do in Excel. And here it's as simple as dragging, replacing, and now I have products off the top, months down the side. But wait, let's say that I wanted to see all of our cost centers nested with all of our products. So let's bring that in. And now I have our product totals by all of our different cost centers listed all the way down. And then I can scroll through and see all of the different numbers. To move it back, it's as simple as just dragging and dropping. So very simple. So next you're going to ask me, Heather, you had talked about entering a new piece of information, right? So the sales department comes and says, hey, we're getting ready to create a 5G 2 terabyte phone. So you got to put this in the model. In Excel, as Heather said, you'd have to go to every tab. You'd have to insert a line. You'd have to make sure your links all flowed properly. You've got a week's worth of work to enter probably one product, I'm guessing. Here, it's as simple as, let me turn off our editing. It's as simple as creating this button that we have a process in behind. It's a type of process. I want to add this to my 5G smartphones. We can give this any product number we want for now. So we'll just put in something here. Let's name this 5G 2TB. Oops. 2TB. Okay. We want it to start. Let's say it was 2020. Maybe the sales department said, you know what? We anticipate we're going to sell 5,000 of these units this year. So we can put 5,000 in. And then they say, you know, it's going to be very similar to our 5G 64 gig. Like we think it's going to sell in a similar pattern to this phone. We can input what our unit price is. So maybe this is $1,200. Maybe the cost is $600. And then we hit OK. In the background, you'll see up here, we've added a product into here. You'll see it's not showing here because I have a selection made of different products. So I just simply double click that. Now my 2 terabyte phone is in. Let me move our head so I can hit apply. And now here's our phone. Input directly into this dimension. So any sheet, any area inside of this product that uses this dimension called products will now have this phone inside of it. So with about 5 clicks and an apply, I have added this into, in your world, an entire Excel workbook linked everything that you might need. It's automatically rolling up to the 5G smartphones, it's automatically rolling up to phones, and it's automatically rolling up to the product title.
So Mike, what took me as an analyst in Excel hours to do, you did in like 4 mouse clicks?
About 4 mouse clicks. Absolutely.
But I want to make sure we also highlight what Mike did. You'll see that Mike forecasted 5,000 units, and he used the profile of the 64 gig phone. So basically, he's using the same seasonality that we had with that other phone. Now, he could have gone back and said, we launched the 64-bit phone 2 years ago, and I'm going to go pull that profile from 2 years ago and use that as my baseline and use that seasonality spread on the ramp up, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but try doing that in Excel. He just had to pick. Now, Mike, what if I got in here and I thought, wait, 5,000 is not the right number, and I wanted to start to model that?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of ways we can do this. We can say, you know what, we don't like this mix. I don't like this number. So I'm just going to set this at 0 for now. So now we've got no data in here. And maybe I wanted it, the sales department now says, you're going to sell 1,000 a month. So I could go in and just type in 1,000 for each month. Or I could simply type in 12,000 and I'd have 1,000 per month.
So you put the 12,000 in the year and it distributed evenly across the months.
Spread it across the board evenly. I could then say, maybe I've now told, you know what, increase that number by 10%. So I could get out my calculator and type my, figure out what 10% is and add that into everything, right? Or I could type in INC 10, and now it's increased everything by 10%. You'll see that it's now 1,100 a month. or I could decrease everything by 10%. Okay, so great shortcuts, but there's more, and there's a lot more. We'll start with this line. So it's at 0, and I'm told, you know what, we're going to sell 10,000 of those. And as we did when we added the product, maybe I want to base that off of a particular spread of a phone. So inside of here, we have a number of different spread data options, meaning we can proportionally spread it, we can repeat it, we can do a percent change, or we can do Heather's favorite, a relative proportional spread. And what this does is say, just like we did when we added the product, let's choose, it's already chosen where we're putting that information, right? And then what we're going to base it on, right? So let's just say we're going to do 5,000 units. And we want to base that on our, I believe we said it was going to be our 64 gigabyte phone. And we're just going to hit apply. And so now it's taken the spread of the 64 gigabyte phone and added in those 5,000 units across the board based on what I just told it to do. Again, in a click of a button. Pretty powerful. Way easier than Excel.
Now, Mike, if I had committed to say, I know I have to sell 5,000 units, but it turns out my ramp up is a little slower than I thought it would be. How would I handle that?
So we could do a number of different things, right? We could set, let's say it's not going to start until April, but I still have to sell 5,000 units. So I'm going to put in some zeros for the first 3 months. Okay. I'm going to put a hold on these cells, meaning when I put in a number in the year, those are going to stay 0. And now if I put in 5,000, it's now taken it across the board and given me 5,000 units. And I could do that. I could spread it now based on, I could go in and change the spread and say, okay, make the spread based on a different product, whatever it might be. So you're able to hold cells or replace different things like that.
So in this example, it turns out it ended up just because of the data before, it was even in the remaining months.
You'll see that these months are even.
Yeah, but if it had differences in each month, those relative proportional spreads would stay the same. So guys, modeling this, just it takes it to a whole nother level. Like Mike could even hold the total year figure for the total products or change that. And it's doing it, what is happening right now, it's doing it multidimensionally. Okay, so when I first saw this technology is what made me fall in love with this product and just multidimensionality, flexibility modeling, in that Mike can change that total product number, and it does this kind of breakback thing where it goes across the months in proportionality, then it's going multidimensional down the products in proportionality. But what he could even do, which he didn't do here, but if he just changed how he looks at the data, he could go at total company and go totally across. So for saying that we have to increase revenue or decrease expenses, this is superpower, right?
Absolutely.
Like you have to do that in Excel, it would take you forever. Yeah. So this is where the huge, like this is like so basic to this type of technology, but it's game changing for the clients that move into it.
And you'll see that when I did that, I don't know if you saw it, it happens quickly, but all of the different charts and graphs move along with it. So everything's interconnected. So any changes I make, you'll see stuff start moving. So really, really, really powerful. All right, so next let's talk about sandboxes. And Heather talked about Excel. That's doing that what if analysis. Maybe your bosses have come to you and said, hey, we're looking at potentially buying a new company, or God forbid, another COVID pandemic starts and we really got to remodel everything, but we don't want to put it in our normal model, but we've got to at least see it. So In the Excel world, you're doing a lot of save as's, you're doing a ton of changing, you're hoping your links are still correct again. In the planning analytics world, it's as simple as going up to the top here, and we're just going to do it off of this same exploration we've been using. And we're going to create a sandbox, and we'll just call this our test sandbox. And we're going to base it off of our base, and we'll hit create. You'll see up top here that I have test loaded. So if I were to go to base, you'll see that those are the same numbers. Okay, so I'm going to start with the test. And let's say you're told, hey, we want to increase everything, by 200%, whatever it might be. Okay, you'll see that everything is turned blue, meaning we're in a sandbox. It hasn't been committed, but it's there, and it's different than our base forecast that we started with. So click of a button, I can switch between the two. Okay, I can do all, anywhere in here, I can do a model based on this test. It's like a save as in Excel, but way easier. And now you're going through all this, and let's say you're told, hey, you know what? We want to make that test sandbox our new base budget. Okay. Simply click this button here, which is the commit data, and it's going to ask you, are you sure you want the data in this sandbox to be your base? And we'll hit yes. And what this has now done is turn black, meaning it's committed. And if I go to my base is now equal to that. Again, a couple clicks of a button.
So what it's done, it's allowed you to do, like we've always done in Excel, right? I do a save as Heather's copy 6, Heather's copy 7, Heather's copy 8.
Mm-hmm.
And historically I've done that and I haven't shared it with people. Like I kind of just doing some my own stuff, right? This is private to Mike until he decides it's not just his anymore. So this is but what's even better, remember we talked about earlier that sometimes you have to add a new item, or maybe you're going to change a calculation. And Excel, you have to go do that to every worksheet, every template. Here, my sandbox, if the master formula is changed, my sandbox would change as well. Because the primary kind of model is all connected. So I don't have to worry about if they decided somewhere else in the model to change the inflation rates, that would kind of flow through even to my sandbox, which I think is super powerful. I love sandboxing.
And you can compare your base and your sandbox in explorations here, or in charts and graph. I mean, all those same comparisons. So I could potentially see, okay, as I'm working in my sandbox, how does that compare to my base? So as I'm doing different calculations and looking at expenses or whatever it might be, I can play basically in the sandbox and figure out what makes the most sense. So really, really powerful. Next, we're going to talk about virtual hierarchy. So Heather, set the stage, because you love talking about this.
Yeah. You can see I love a lot of things, but this is also game changing. IBM came out with this technology, about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I first saw it, I almost fell off my chair. And here's why. Let's give a scenario where you have, you have your products that you're selling. They have a source of origin, and this horrible thing called a pandemic happens. And then what happens is you now are very concerned with inventory and supply side, right? Like we can't go sell things that we can't get in. And so suddenly the CFO comes to you and says, we really need to start looking at our products based on source of origin. Now, pre-pandemic, you had that information sitting probably somewhere, but it wasn't probably part of your financial models. But now we are like, whoa, we got to find out what country this stuff is made. Is it made? I tried to order something online the other day and it had a little disclaimer. This is coming out of the Ukraine. We have no idea when it will come to you, right? So, or maybe it's coming out of China and we're worried about what's happening there. So I say to Mike, I need you to go look at these products in a different way, and I need to be able to compare them and analyze them based on country of origin. And now, if you're in Excel, what are you going to do? Anybody else having one of those old like moments, right? We're going to show you how easy it is to do here. So go ahead, Mike.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to bore you with everything that's here, but this is just a dimension. This is just a list of data, and it has a lot of attributes, things that you might need for this dimension, right? To add in this, what we call virtual hierarchy, we're going to do country, and you'll see there's already one here. We're going to pretend that's not there. So I'm going to add in, and we'll just call it C for lack of a better term. We'll create this. You'll see that it's brought in a new attribute. From there, I could use an Excel file, load this data in here, but for the sake of time, I'll just start typing some things in. We could type and type and type and type, but you get the point, right? We've just added in a few pieces of data. Going back, you'll see that our 2 terabyte phone is in here. I remember I added it somewhere else, but now it's in this dimension list, which means it's everywhere, right? So we'll just do USA and Mexico. Okay, so let's pretend we've populated all of these. All I need to do now is go ahead and click this button, create hierarchy, and it's going to say, do you want to create a hierarchy off of this? Meaning it's splicing this multi-dimensionality into its own separate area. Okay, so now that we've created that virtual hierarchy, I'm just going to go back to the same exploration we've been using. And I want to do some analysis with that information I just added in, right? So I simply click on the ellipsis, go to hierarchy, add related. We're going to add the C, which we just created. Hit add, and you'll now see that all of that data has now been broken up by that hierarchy and then also by the main product dimension at a few clicks of a button. So I'm going to pause for a second. I want you to think about how powerful that was that we just did.
If you'd like to ooh and ah, that's fine.
Absolutely.
I did. Like, amazing. We didn't have to rebuild anything. We didn't have to rebuild spreadsheets. We literally added a couple data points to something that already existed and then leveraged those data points to create dimensions within our existing structures.
And
like, I don't know about you, but think about all the ways you could use this, right? You could do modeling on, maybe you're a company that does a lot of projects and you have project managers and you're going to reconfigure things. You could use this to do that and say, I'm going to now assign these projects to different people. What does that look like? Like, there's so many ways that you can use this.
For accountants who look at income statements, and a lot of times you need to look at fixed versus variable, but there's not a flag. It's not built into the model. Simply create a hierarchy, put an F and a V in there, and now you've got your fixed versus variable costs, just like that.
It's literally game-changing.
Game-changing. So next, we've been talking about product planning and things of that nature, but you can do so much more in here, right? Let's talk about headcount for a second. So here's a headcount model. You'll see that we have a number of employees broken out. The beauty of this is, let me change to another region so I have some blank spots. So let's say in Maryland, we're getting ready to hire a new employee. Okay, so we're just going to call her Heather.
Yay, good job.
From here, I've got some drop-down lists that have been created into the modeling. So I could say, okay, are we going to hire her in sales or finance or whatnot? We'll make Heather an executive. It's my boss. We'll give her a job code, right? We're going to call her the CEO. You'll see that it's pre-populated a salary, again, from another cube. So Heather talked about, that what if modeling, but based on certain drivers, things of that nature, inflation, right? So inflation's a big one right now. So maybe I need to go back into my cube or my information that's feeding this and up all the salaries a little bit, because that's kind of where the world's headed right now, right? So I could do that and it would flow through automatically. So driver-based modeling. I'm going to go ahead and put in 1 FTE. Okay, so you'll see that it's populated across the board. Then I could go in, I can make some changes. I could put in a merit period, an adjustment period.
I think I need a much higher salary, Mike. I'm just saying.
So now I've updated it to $250,000, right? And I could drive, and say, okay, every May she's going to get a 5% adjustment, whatever it might be, or 1%, I think I typed, or 0.1. You get paid enough. And then it's going through and it's giving you your total cost. So in the background, there's going to be some calculations based on, FICA and SUTA and medical and all of that. So here's your total cost for this new employee, right? And you'll see again that all the charts and graphs have gone through. And the beauty of this is you can, again, filter down through all your different regions. So I can add in, I can add in, I can add in. And then as we get to the end, it's all flown through to an income statement. So everything I've done now, I've entered products, I've adjusted pricing, I've done this, I've done that. I've taken a sandbox and I've now made it a base version. I've added in a virtual hierarchy. I've added in some headcount. Everything has just been flowing as I've done it right to an income statement. So at the end, I can see my total, what everything looks like. Do I need to adjust anything, and go from there? So really, really, really powerful tool that I hope you can see how much more efficient, easier it is than using Excel.
So what we've been kind of showing you guys is how you can put this plan together. As Mike said, we focused on some revenue. We showed a little headcount, OpEx, CapEx, marketing plans, sales plans. If you think about it from a perspective, everything that you do in Excel today could be handled within a multidimensional, super flexible, super powerful modeling tool. So typically what you do is you start small. You figure out, what are you doing today in Excel? Where can be your biggest wins? And maybe it's expense planning right now, or maybe it's revenue planning, right? Or headcount, like what's happening right now. Behind the scenes, you saw that Mike had grayed out areas. It was giving him some recommendations, right? Based on an assumption cube. In that assumption cube, you could go and say, hey, based on inflation, we got to bump everybody up more. Like we're going to lose talented people if they're not able to keep up with inflation. So you could go in globally, change that, and have it flow all the way through the model. So just amazingly powerful. Being able to put some control mechanisms. Mike showed you how he select executive, and then the job titles were just those that apply to that. Being able to put those controls in the entry so that various departments are accurately and not picking like the wrong accounts or the wrong people and so forth. So it has the flexibility of Excel with the control and security, I'm going to say, of correctness that we've been missing in Excel for years.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now that we've shown you what's possible, I'm sure you have a million ideas. Hopefully you're taking some notes of what you would like, but let's take this to the next step. If you're starting to say, maybe we do need a better tool, I'm going to teach you how to get started today. And it's super easy. What you're going to do is you are going to start, I recommend that you get kind of your team together, maybe order in some pizzas. And what you're going to do is you're going to do the basic requirements discovery. By the way, this should be done before you start looking for software and tools and so forth. This should be your starting point because you have to think about what you need in your organization. Mike just gave you some ideas, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to take your phone, you're going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Everybody in the room is going to get a stack of sticky notes. I recommend the super sticky. And you're going to set the timer and just start writing down ideas of what you want. I want that breakback capability so I can model and hold cells and do increase decrease. Write that down. I want to be able to add an item and have it populate through the model. Write that down. I need to integrate with SAP data, whatever it is, write it down. There are no stupid answers, but you set the timer because in our experience, you could take months and maybe years to try and define your requirements, or you get the right people in the room, you set a timer and you make it happen fast. I like to say it's kind of like cleaning my house. If I have all day Saturday to clean my house, it's going to take me all day Saturday. If I have a text message saying, hey, Head, I'm coming over, be there in a half hour, it's amazing what I can get done in a half hour, right? So I'm going to set that timer. Then what you're going to do is you're going to, as a group, kind of vote on and organize the ideas that people came up with as absolute must-haves, kind of nice-to-haves, and then kind of one, backlog, don't really need it, but if we could, that's great. And then that's going to really help you start that discovery requirements gathering process. Now, once you have that, now you can start to have conversations with various software vendors, but don't forget to engage IT and ask them the big question of, do we have to go on-prem or do we have to go SaaS, or what's our footprint look like? That will help you narrow the field to something that meets your organization's needs, and we always want IT happy. Now, the next thing that you can do, if you've never run an evaluation process, or if you have, but you'd like a little checklist, at Lodestar Solutions, we provide everybody we talk to our software evaluation checklist. This is just a sample here, and it's just an Excel file that kind of walks you through the key steps that most companies go through to run an efficient evaluation. Why is this important? Is because you want to make sure that when you do look at software, you're making a big investment in time and resources. And also, obviously, in the technology, you want to make sure it's the right fit. You want to run an efficient evaluation process, or you're just wasting everyone's time. And so you come prepared by having your requirements discovery done. You'll notice that is kind of very early up. That sticky note is number 2. If you'd like us to guide you through this process, give us a call. We're happy to share this evaluation checklist with you as well. And all you have to do is email us at services@lodestarsolutions.com or give us a call. And Mike and I will be happy to help. Mike, any final thoughts?
No, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I hope your mind is starting to turn, especially if you're stuck in Excel. I feel your pain. Heather's been there. A lot of people have been there, and a lot of people are realizing the benefits of a software like Planning Analytics that helps remove that pain point.
So if you've just come through your budgeting cycle, or maybe you're about to go through a forecasting cycle and you're thinking there's got to be a better way, there is. Give us a call. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.